Disclaimer. Do not send any type of harassment or negativity towards the creators that I review. This includes hateful comments, mass paying the creators, dislike spamming, and toxic videos about them. This video is for entertainment purposes, and even then, what I say could be wrong, so please take my videos with a grain of salt. Enjoy! You know, at one point we're gonna have to review Vividen at some point, so that's it, really. So, welcome to this Vividen video review. So, let's see how this Vividen video holds up.
Human beings are fascinated by the extremes in nature. It's part of our natural curiosity to try to map the limits of what exists in the world around us, and that curiosity goes crazy when it comes to which animals were the biggest.
So, in the land, it's confirmed to be Argentinosaurus, however, its status is disputed because of the Brachiosaurus. In terms of the water, it's definitely the blue whale, and overall, it's definitely the blue whale. However, Vividen might try and debunk this. I'm not going to try and blindly trust Vividen, though.
Part of the thrill of science is learning how nature doesn't bow to the supposed limits and expectations that we as humans place upon it. That is abundantly clear when it comes to sauropod dinosaurs. In this video, we'll find out how big the biggest sauropod ever likely would have been.
So far, it's confirmed to be Argentinosaurus, but who knows? Maybe one dinosaur, maybe one sauropod suffered from gigantism, and even amongst its genus, even amongst its species, and even then, it just wouldn't be extremely feasible. It would be extremely, extremely rare, so much so that a lot of people just dismiss this theory over here that I made.
Sauropods were in a class of their own in the context of terrestrial fauna. The next largest land animals, huge elephant relatives like Paleoloxodon pneumaticus, topped out at between 15 and 20 tons.
The largest ones would have reached 22. However, such individuals would have been extremely rare. And you also showed Paleoloxodon pneumaticus being 22 tons in this particular photo here, so I know why you're still saying 15 to 20 tons. Well, you're just being a bit inconsistent with the thing you show and the thing you say.
While titanic by today's standards, that's small fry compared to the bigger titanosaurs, which were like walking high-rises. The most recent peer-reviewed mass estimates for Argentinosaurus, widely regarded as the biggest sauropod for which we have decent remains, indicate that the few specimens we have weighed between 70 and 80 metric tons.
Which is around the acceptable estimate for the Argentinosaurus size. Most estimates say that Argentinosaurus is around 65 to 80 metric tons. Some say that Argentinosaurus can be up to 84 metric tons. However, it's possible that a 100 metric ton Argentinosaurus could have existed if gigantism were to be a thing here. However, such would be an exception rather than the rule.
Lost fragmentary giants like the Indian titanosaur Fangorn razoris may have been around 120 tons or higher.
Unfortunately for Vividen, he got it quite wrong. The name of this sauropod is actually the Brachiosaurus,
although now only known from photographs. So now we know, based on available evidence, how big megasauropods appear to have gotten. But our sample size of sauropods is tiny, and it would be foolish to assume that we found even close to the biggest taxon.
I feel like this is where Vividen is probably in the right page over here. He also thinks that gigantism among sauropods was a thing. However, I think that it would have been exceptionally rare, and I don't think anyone would have reached, like, even 150 metric tons. That would be way too much.
So what was the biggest that sauropods could plausibly get? Where was their limit really? Fortunately, physics may hold the answer. Jyrki Hokanen, a biophysicist at the University of Helsinki, analyzed the relationship of bone strength relative to muscle mass required for terrestrial locomotion.
This is made in 1985, though, which is quite a little bit old and outdated.
He calculated that the upper mass limit for land animals is well over 100,000 kilograms and allowed for the possibility of evolutionary adaptation pushing that limit even further. After his exhaustive analysis, Hokonen concluded that the highest possible mass for an animal that could still move on land using legs was 600,000 kilograms.
Oh, good God. Why does Vividen have to trust such estimates blindly, man? 600 tons. I doubt any sauropod would have ever reached even 150 tons, like I said. This guy also used an antelope instead of... Okay. The absolute limit mass of a sauropod is just undetermined right now, but I can tell you right now it's not 600 tons, like this guy said. There's just too many problems with a 600-ton animal. First of all, gravity. Gravity is just going to crush this thing to death under its own weight. Second of all, it's going to be... Okay, this guy says it's mobile, but how about sauropods? Sauropods are already ridiculously slow. Honestly, I don't know if anything that is over 150 tons can move on land. Water physics are quite different from terrestrial physics, land physics, so I'll give blue whales a pass for that. But 600 tons is just... Not even water physics can save an animal.
Another 2023 study mentioned that circulatory and musculoskeletal issues commonly cited as limits on terrestrial animal size are being discovered to no longer pose much of a problem when it comes to sauropods.
Do you see this paper over here? Do you see... Can you read more closely here? Blue whales typically mass 100 to 150 tons, with rare females apparently reaching 200 tons. We can forgive blue whales because of water physics. But the sauropods not only are not on water, but also have completely different anatomies from blue whales that I just don't trust this estimate at all.
So what does that mean for a 600-ton beast? What kind of ecological pressure could have created such an animal?
I'm going to take word from biology class. It's because of random mutations that cause the creature to be absolutely gigantic because of gigantism. But even then, the 600 metric ton sauropod is just completely insane. This is not a case of queso.
The truth is that I don't think any animal approached 600 tons. Not because it wasn't skeletally possible, since Hokonen's calculations seem to indicate that it was, but because we don't know of any reason why an animal would have an evolutionary need to even get close to that size.
It's probably because it's compulsory because of mutations. And again, I don't think a 600-ton animal would be able to hold itself up because of gravity.
The trade-offs would be enormous, pun intended. The strain on an animal's heart, the circulatory pathways it would need to develop, the excruciating slowness that would come with such a weight. It would do more harm than good to be that big, and it would need to eat so much that no ecosystem could support it.
Ah, I see here. Vividen is also making some good points here. These, along with gravity and all that, make a 600-ton sauropod just not feasible and practically impossible. You know, it's survival of the fittest, and a 600-ton sauropod is definitely not among the fittest.
Not to mention that if an animal ever did approach that weight, it probably wouldn't be using a sauropod body plan. They weren't designed to be quite that big. So if 600 tons is out of the question for megasauropods, what's a realistic upper limit for the biggest land animals ever? Ecology may save us, or physics cannot. Forewarning, this section of the video is calculating a hypothetical maximum size for the biggest sauropod genera. It's all theoretical, and we have not discovered a sauropod this big. This is speculation.
I speculate it's closer to 150 tons based on how a sauropod moves and how a sauropod's air sacs and all that.
That said, it's speculation fueled by months of research and a large number of previous studies. So let's dive in. As mentioned earlier, the sample size of sauropod dinosaurs is tiny. Most species are only known from a handful of individual skeletons of varying completeness, making establishing a true average mass for each one pretty much impossible. So for simplicity's sake, I took 19 large-bodied sauropods and generated an average mass from multiple peer-reviewed estimates for them.
I'd probably just also use the square cube law in terms of a bunch of femurs and all that. Okay. This video is turning out to be fine. I'm just iffy about the 600-ton estimate.
A 75-ton average for Argentinosaurus, for example, came from combining the estimates from 6 published studies to get a general range for how heavy it likely was.
We can also use the femur length and try and determine it, but at this point, it's just almost impossible to really get a true picture of it.
For argument's sake, we're saying that a normal adult Argentinosaurus would have been around that mass. In real life, it could have been higher or lower.
I'm also kind of glad that Vividen acknowledges that a bunch of estimates are just not very great. Well, I feel like Vividen in general, accuracy-wise, is kind of the same as Goji Center. Probably a little bit worse, honestly, given that Goji Center at least doesn't do ridiculous statements. I'm not trying to glaze Goji Center, but I'm just stating this because Vividen sometimes comes up with ridiculous statements.
Ideally, the best way to calculate the top end of a sauropod's mass would be to use another well-studied sauropod genus as a proxy. This genus would have a well-sampled population ranging from hatchling to old adult and would have comprehensive histological studies done on every specimen, telling us how old it was so we could directly compare fully grown adults.
My gripe with this is that there are a ton of sauropods. There are a ton of sauropod variants. A bunch of them are Titanosaurs, a bunch of them are not. The largest ones belong to the Titanosaurs, so we should probably use Titanosaurs as proxy.
Unfortunately, that information doesn't exist. I did spend several months collecting Camarasaurus measurements from previous studies in museums, including BYU and the University of Utah, but because we don't know the age of all the specimens, they can't be used to establish an adult size range. The next best thing is to look at the populations of related animals that are well studied. After speaking with several sauropod experts, including Mike Taylor, Brian Curtis, Matt Weddle, and Ray Wilhite, I decided that the best analogs for sauropod dinosaurs would be the following: other non-avian dinosaurs with large sample sizes, avian dinosaurs, and large herbivorous mammals.
Okay. This is quite interesting. I should probably have a research team at some point. I did a poll and most of my community wants me to have a research team. So, I mean, I might do a research team at some point, but as of now, I have just like 14,000 subscribers. It's probably not enough yet.
Based on the conversations I had with the experts, along with studies done on sauropod bone structure and growth patterns, indicated that these groups would be the best to use for population dynamics comparison. The large-bodied mammal species, ranging from gorillas to giraffes to elephants, had an average to maximum ratio of 2.06. That means that the heaviest measured member of the species was just over twice the mass of an average adult.
This is something I like about Vividen. Okay, I'm not trying to be a P-jit or anything, but like, Vividen is fine as a channel itself, especially paleontology-wise.
I ignored sexual dimorphism for the project since it's an extraordinarily difficult thing to identify in fossils in the best of cases, so male and female weights were all lumped together in one. Avian dinosaurs, in this case limited to 6 species of large modern birds, had an average to maximum ratio of 1.67, which was lower than the mammals. Fellow non-avian dinosaurs, with the smallest sample size of 4 species, demonstrated a ratio of 1.94.
Yeah, the guy also noted that the iguanodon figures are likely overestimated here, so he probably should have used a bunch more other non-avian dinosaurs instead of the iguanodon, which would have actually made it will probably be the most reliable one, and it would actually make the Argentinosaurus around like 125 tons, actually 130 tons, 135. So 150 tons is a little bit of an overestimate for me, by me even. So I gotta acknowledge that it's not perfect. My videos are not perfect.
When we apply those ratios to sauropods, we get some mind-boggling numbers. The largest hypothetical Argentinosaurus would be 125 tons based on birds, 145 tons based on non-avian dinosaurs, and 154 tons based on large herbivorous mammals. It's important to note that, if anything, these numbers are underestimates, since the ratios were obtained from relatively small sample sizes of the taxa used to create them.
Oh, never mind then. So my 150-ton guess is actually quite plausible, given the, whatchamacallit again, the dynamics of gravity, physics, and every single other thing and all that. Okay.
The true variation in an animal population is going to be bigger than the individuals we happen to have measured. And again, this is speculation, but it's also incredibly cool and fun to think about.
But once again, I have to reiterate that I doubt anything would have reached over 150 tons on land. We can forgive them in water physics, but this is land we're talking about, so we can't really forgive them. And, you know, we've got physics, we've got gravity, we've got its nutritional needs, dietary needs, and its effects in the ecosystem, after all.
What more reason do we need to ask questions like these? Of course, this dataset will gradually become more refined as time goes on, and new discoveries will continue to change our understanding of these magnificent animals. It's clear that there's plenty more to learn about the biggest land animals ever.
I mean, paleontology is supposed to be much richer than bigger is better. We can basically say paleontology also talks about prehistoric ecology, biodiversity, and every single other thing before that, and, you know, just not be a Paget, after all. We can also focus on stuff like the, whatchamacallit, the Paleozoic era, as you can see, Eon. Oh my goodness, I'm always having a brain fart right now. Not really an excuse, though. Correct me if I'm wrong here on the terms. And also, you know, we can talk about stuff like Gorgonopsids and every single other thing after that. You know, I have a more natural affinity towards dinosaurs, but it doesn't mean that I have to focus on dinosaurs every single time. Stuff like the Cenozoic, stuff like the everything, you know. We can also talk about Glyptodon and every single other thing after that. Ugh, man. Paleontology is supposed to be rich. Paleontology is supposed to be very good. And some people just water it down to bigger means better. Basically just power scaling. I apologize for all the yapping. Let's just continue.
When we do, you'll know where to find the info right here on Vividen Paleontology Evolved. This video was the brief summary of a study that I performed for my undergraduate research in biology, presented at the 2024 Utah Conference for Undergraduate Research.
So I think that's the end of this video, as you can see here. You know, to be honest, Vividen, this video isn't really bad, but like, especially from a channel that is renowned for its accuracy. This is actually not terrible, but I think I expected a bit better than that. Goji Center kind of outdid you there, bro. So, no hate towards Vividen. Don't go harass him. I even said that in the disclaimer earlier on, so thank you guys for watching this video anyway. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all in the next one.